I'm Mike Johnson, that's my wife Allison, and our son Caden. And we just bought an 120-year-old farmhouse on 15 acres. We set this channel up so that you can follow us on our journey to renovate this property into a retreat that our family and friends can enjoy for decades to come. But I gotta warn you, there will be challenges, and this won't be easy.
And whoa, look at that.
But then again, what worth having is easy. So hit the subscribe button and we'll bring you along every step of the way. Let's go.
Hey, what's up, folks? It's Mike, and welcome to episode 17, where we're going to talk about all of the structural repairs that we made to this house. And trust me, it was a lot, but we're done, and we're going to walk you through what we did. Now, if you remember from episode 15, we talked about all of the repairs that we had to make on this foundation. We had an old pier and beam foundation that was basically just stacked stones sitting right on top of the dirt with the timber sitting on top of that. And we had a structural engineer that recommended that we install 13 concrete footers and piers to support the foundation going forward for the rest of the renovation. So this video is going to pick up at the point where all of those concrete footers were already installed. Now, one of the things that we learned when we were in the crawl space installing the new concrete footers and piers was that the structural support beam on the front of the house was completely rotted by termites. And there was no way that we could properly continue the renovation with that rotted support beam there. So this video is going to outline how we replaced that structural beam and how we finished up all the other repairs for the foundation. So our first step was to cut open the subfloor on the front of the house so that we could access that rotten wooded beam. Now, when we cut open the subfloor, we set our circular saw to the depth of the subfloor just so that we wouldn't cut through the floor joists underneath it. Now, you'll see later in the video, that was pretty much a waste of time, but we'll get there in a minute. So once we got the subfloor off and we were able to access that rotten structural beam in the front of the house, this is where things got tricky and interesting, particularly because this house is a balloon framed house versus platform frame house. And there's a ton of nice videos that kind of explain the difference between the two. But basically, with a balloon frame house like this one, all of the framing is sitting directly on that structural beam. So all of the wall studs and the floor joists that is essentially holding all of the weight of the house, at least the wall studs is, all the way up to the roof, they're sitting directly on this beam that's completely rotted through termites. So a huge unknown for us when we were making these repairs is we had no idea what was going to happen once we started to tear out this wooden beam that's rotted that all of this weight is just sitting on. So what we decided to do was use bottle jacks to support the floor joists, which were also nailed to the wall studs, and just kind of hope for the best. So once we got the floor joist supported with the jacks, we started to slowly tear out that rotted beam and just to kind of watch and observe the house and see what would happen. And we quickly realized that the beam was so rotted that it really wasn't supporting much weight at all. In fact, we were kind of wondering what the hell was still holding this house up, considering how we're literally ripping out this beam that all these wall studs and floor joists are sitting on, and the house is not even buckling. So there it is. That rotted beam has been completely pulled out, and you'll see that the wall studs that were sitting directly on it are just suspended in air, not moving, perfectly intact. It's kind of crazy. But now that that's pulled out, now we're in a place now where we can start to install the replacement beam, which will ultimately be a 4-ply 2x10 treated beam that will rest right underneath these wall studs. So once we got our 4-ply wood beam replacement in place, we were able to install our last couple concrete piers and build it up to that new installed beam. And here you'll see the beam actually has 3 plies at this point. We would add the 4th ply later on just for good measure. But you can see now that, the home's perimeter foundation is now rock solid. That rotten beam has been pulled out. We have a nice 4-ply treated lumber support beam underneath it. And we have concrete footing and piers below it to support. But we'd soon realize that we have another problem to deal with. We knew going into the repair that the subfloor was way out of level, right where this repair took place, where the structural beam was. But what we were hoping was that we could jack up the floor joist to correct that levelness. But we soon realized that it wasn't going to work. There was just too much of a gap that we had to cover. It was about a 3-inch gap in terms of the drop in one corner. And our floor joists that were installed, because they were just sitting right on top of the beam, there was no way for us to do it properly with those beams. So we had to make the tough decision to rip out all of the existing floor joists and subfloor and just replace all of it. So as you can see now, we have an entirely new floor joist system, entirely new subfloor system with 3/4 inch plywood, which by the way is not cheap right now. So the rest of this renovation hopefully is a lot more smooth than the foundation stuff is, but we know now and we're confident that we're building on a solid ground. So we're happy we did it, and we look forward to the rest of the renovation.
Click that subscribe button.